Hello again. Okay, so today I am going to talk about one of my analysis on kind of the ET situation on this planet and us. And I wrote it in a form regarding dimensions and beings that live in the multiverse. We live in the multiverse. We're in we're in the lowest part of the physical multiverse, basically, is where we live in our present existence. There's a lot of other universes in the multiverse. Through my understanding, and through the understanding of Guy Needler, who helped me to understand my own position in the multiverse and who I am and my own experiences, he helped me a lot, and he knew exactly what was going on with me, and what he says fits in with my experience. So I have a lot of faith in what he says, but everyone's perspective is unique because we're all unique beings throughout the multiverse, and that is for a purpose and that is for a point. And the point is life, and the point is for us all to explore ourselves and where we live. And everything that we do in all of our lives are recorded and used as information for that which is seeking to expand itself. And that is what I understand. And that's an understanding of many mystics and spiritual people. I've always had this, not always, but for a long time I've had this perspective on it and how to see it. And I talk about it using dimensions and stuff, but since I've learnt Guy Needler's perspective and his understanding, I've changed what I say. This is one piece of information, you could call it, or my perspective, to be about frequencies rather than dimensions, although frequencies and dimensions are all included in this multiverse, but they're just not in the same way as you understand them. If you see my other videos, I do explain it. Anyway, I'm going to read it from the book. I've put this perspective in my book, Multiversal, which I highly recommend you buy. Not that I'm going to make lots of money out of writing books. I think if I talked once with Nick Redfern, and I had conversations with him on and off over the years via email, because he was living in America since I've really started, and I was asking questions about what he wrote in some of his books before, and on the beginning of my journey of trying to understand what's going on with myself and trying to understand all these other things that everyone else is saying, other people's experiences, and trying to understand where I fit into all that, and does all that fit in with me, and how does it all fit together? We're all on that journey of trying to understand. I started to write down my experiences. That was my first book, and my first book is this one, UFOs, ETs and Paranormal Experiences. This is a second edition. It had a longer title, the first one, but I changed the title and the cover for this, made it more exciting looking. And I think that was started out to be, I wrote down my experiences. I realised that perhaps I could turn my experiences into a book. That wasn't my intention. I just wanted to write them down before I got old and decrepit and started not remembering them very well, as our memories tend to get fuzzy, and we maybe change things as we go along because we think differently or have new ideas. So I just wanted to get it down as I understood them. And I sent them to Nick Redfern, and I said, I think I'm writing a book. And I wrote this thing, and he said to me, yeah, that's okay. He said, but you need more information around experiences. You need data and information. You need to bring it out, other stuff, which was really good advice. So that's what I did with that book. And he also said, if you're thinking of making loads of money from writing books about UFOs, he said you don't make lots of money doing that. He said he has a full-time job as a writer for one of these, I think it's an online magazine thing. I can't remember what it's called now. Sorry, Nick. Not Paranormal. What is it? I can't remember. Anyway, and so, he's right. I'm not looking to make money. I'm just looking to get my story out there and what I understand from my own perspective, and hoping that, I'm sure that having that out, there's an energy, isn't there? Everything's energy, and I think this is an energy. The books are energy, and it's my understanding of how it all works for me and my perspective. And it may help other people. I'm sure it will do. It may not help many, but it only has to help one person for it to be worthwhile. So, and with the modern age, the internet and everything, you can do. I'm self-published on Amazon and Draft, 2 books, I think it is, and the links will be in the description. And I've sold some books, not a great many. It doesn't matter. I'm not here to make money out of it. I'm here to just get the word out and to help anyone that might be helped by it. So that's my purpose in doing this. And I think we're getting slowly closer to to understanding. I want to say disclosure, but it's not like everyone talks about the American government and having disclosure, because they obviously have a lot of technology. They're far more advanced in technology than what we have in the public domain, because always they're going to have much more advanced technology in the military domain, because they want to have an advantage over their enemies, and they're never going to release that information or that technology, because then they wouldn't have that advantage. So that's not in their best interest to do that. But I think some of that technology, or some of what we have, probably comes from what we call ET technology. I think we're all ETs. We're ETs to other beings and other planets. Everyone's an ET. We're just other people living in different places. That's all it is. It's just a kind of racism in a way against ETs. They're just other beings like we're beings. I'm detracting from the point now. You always get myself distracted with other thoughts that come in. Anyway, that's the whole point. Doesn't really matter. So anyway, I get my word out. It helps some people. And if you enjoy it, that's great. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it's helpful for someone. If you know anyone that might be helpful for, then please pass it on, share it, put it on all the social medias. Why not? Like I say, I'm not in it for the money, because there is no money in it. I spent more money on advertising on Amazon than I've made in book sales. And I can't afford to keep advertising on Amazon or anything, so it's just out there at the moment. The right people will find it. That's what I think. I think I feel like I'm supposed to. That's part of my being here as a human on this planet, in this place, is to write these books, and to get them out so that they're here. It all makes a difference. I think, like I say, everything's an energy, and the energy of that helps. I like to think so anyway. Anyway, so here we go. Let's see if I can find this section in my book and read it. I've been doing other videos on the book, and my marker, that's where I started, it's where I left off. And I have a chapter, Diary of Continuing Experiences and Understanding, which continued from the main point of the book, which was 2018. Although I do go back in the past a bit to try and... It's a standalone book. You don't have to have the first book to be able to read the second. And this is not all of my continuing experiences. There's a lot more, but some... It's hard. I'll try to put in here what I thought made sense to be in here. And some things are just snapshot memories of various things. Like, I don't know if I want to say really, but like training, I had some sort of... I don't know whether it was my primary incarnation, because I'm a secondary incarnation. I should have to look at the previous videos to find out, or read the book. Find out what I mean by that. Primary incarnation and secondary incarnation. I'm a secondary incarnation, so there's another me. Actually, there's many me's in reality throughout the multiverse. It's very complex, and I'm not going to even begin to go into that, not at the moment anyway. One of these me's was in a training program. It's like a kind of military program, but sort of the secret services sort of program about carrying out missions. So and I remember one dream, and I thought, was this a mission I did somewhere as someone at some time, at some point in the multiverse? But it turns out, I was talking to a friend of mine who said, "Oh, it doesn't seem like it seems right. It seems like it's not a real event or something." And then I realised myself, I was like, "Oh, It was a training mission. It was training me to how to get over or get past situations and scenarios. It was a scenario. Well, I ended up getting shot in this scenario. So I failed. And it was a training. But it was a training exercise apparently. So anyway, but that didn't really fit in with all the things in the book. It's kind of, I don't know how it fits in with what me in what scenario, in what part of the multiverse, whether, I don't know. So I don't know who to connect it to. There's lots of things like that I can't connect with what the books, and what I'm talking about and my specific experience here I'm talking about. So there's many things that I've not mentioned. So there's some continuing experiences there. I was going to put it in this book, but I didn't in the end, I don't think. This is it. So I've titled it in the book, My Analogy on the Multiversality of Our Existence. So this is my perspective, not just on my experience, but everyone else's in the multiverse in a way. Because we're all multiversal beings, all of us. And this is my story, but what I'm trying to say in this story is how this relates to us all. This is our story about the multiverse. It's my personal story and memory and perspective. But this is our story. This is everyone's story. I'm not saying that this is the only, my particular reality or particular involvement in the multiverse as the primary and secondary incarnation. It's probably one of many different ways of being a being and living in the multiverse. This is not, I'm saying everyone is the same as me, but this is mine, and this will be the same as many other people. And many other people have completely different experiences and come from a different angle and are different beings in different places. It's very complex and complicated. I think the overall of it seems to me now a bit quite simple in a way. There's a structure to the universe, which I tried to explain through Guy's understanding of the structure of the multiverse, I should say, not the universe. The universe is just a very small part of the multiverse. Our physical universe that we see, feel, hear and touch, smell, through our limited senses, is at the very base of the multiverse. And we're just one very small level, very basic one at that. Where we're not here, but it's a very important one because, an analogy of a house, I suppose, if you haven't got the foundations of a house isn't going to stand up. It's going to crumble. So the base is extremely important. And we are the base of everything. And to be here and experience and be a human is very important, and is a lot that we can learn as beings, conscious, sentient beings that we are. We're on a journey of progression, evolution and progression as a sentient being. And coming here really helps us to evolve and progress as a much, what we can call higher frequency being. Because, it's a tough place in this lower frequency existence. It's quite a harsh place. And we can learn a lot, and it helps us to evolve and grow, and others as well, as we share our experiences with others. With others. All right, that's quite a long intro to my analogy on the multiversality of our existence. That's what I mean, our, important word. I'm going to start. Finally, you might be saying. We are beings of 10 frequencies. The physical part of us residing in the first 3 frequencies. But I want you to imagine that you are a first frequency level being. That's 1 dimension in old currency. Because the frequencies and dimensions are not as we're thinking about, or science is thinking about in the general scientific literature, etc. It's different. And we're using it differently. These are words, of course, trying to explain something which labels don't often apply very well. So I want you to imagine that you're a first frequency level being, a one-dimensional being in old currency. Literally a dot on a piece of A4 paper. So you have to use your imaginations for this, but it's worth it. The physical environment in which you live is a second frequency environment, second dimension in old money. Length and breadth, and the thickness of the paper and the surrounding environment is the third frequency or time dimension in old money. You move forwards in your life as a first frequency being along a line of the paper surface, which is your physical environment. So think of a pencil and a dot and a drawn line, and you are the dot, and the line is your time of life which is your physical environment. And the movement forwards is through the third frequency, or what we think of as time. You can only go forwards in time just like us. So you are travelling along this line in a forward direction. Now imagine someone pushes a pencil through the paper, right through the lifeline of your first frequency self. The lifeline would have to go around the pencil. So as you hit the pencil, it essentially is blocking your life. You would hit the pencil, but not understand what it is. But you would only know that something is blocking your life. You can think of that in any which way you like. And that you would have to go in another direction, either this way or that way in your life, to get around this block. So this first frequency being lives in this third frequency environment. He cannot see, smell, taste or touch this third frequency. It is only that he moves through it. In the same way as we as a physical third frequency beings move through time, but we cannot see, smell, taste or touch it. But we move through it in one direction. Let's say that this first frequency being manages, through let's say meditation, to get their consciousness to let go of the first frequency body and come into the third frequency environment. And as he does this, he manages to see this pencil. Now, he would not understand what this pencil is, what its use is, or anything. He cannot really fully comprehend it. But he can see that it is there, blocking his life. And therefore, he has to go around it. Because his life is only first frequency, he would only have some kind of distorted view of this pencil. He might see some colours or some shapes, but he would not be able to comprehend it fully. He'll have no words or language to describe it, no labels, but he will simply see in some way that there is something that is the block in his life. He would never have seen a pencil before. And because he lives in the first frequency, a pencil is a three-dimensional or three frequency object, which he's never been able to see before. So he wouldn't be able to comprehend it. His consciousness would not be, hasn't got enough bandwidth. So when he goes back into his first frequency body, he might try to explain what he experienced to others. They will likely think him weird, strange, off his head, because he would not be able to explain it properly. He would say, there are these things blocking our lives, and they exist on another plane of existence. Some will think he is a liar, or mad, or just trying to get attention. This first frequency being is living in his life, in a line, on his second frequency plane of existence. He cannot see the edges of the paper or the depth of the paper, the third frequency. So this paper with his life on it is a whole. So we as third frequency beings can see his life as a whole. We can see the lifeline and the start of his life and the end of his life as we are looking down onto this lower frequency level plane of existence. Just like looking at a piece of paper on a table. We can interact with him at any point on his life or in his life. because we have access to the whole from our vantage point. We could even place that pencil through his lifeline. He has no idea of the true purpose or reason of this pencil, that it is an implement, a tool which we use to draw or to write for communication. Let alone would he have the concept of these absolutely massive, from his perspective, beings that use these tools. Just think of the size of this first frequency being and the size of us, third frequency beings. We are millions of times the size of this dot on a bit of paper. He cannot possibly imagine it or grasp the concept of us, and that we put this pencil through his lifeline, or that we live in a third frequency in our own space-time, and have chairs, tables, on which his whole environment sits, or houses, cars, countries. He would never be able to grasp the enormity or meaning of it all. It is completely outside his vision, imagination, understanding or concept. There is no way with him just being a point on a piece of paper. Now his life on the second frequency plane of existence is complicated and full of rich detail in his opinion, but from our perspective, his life is very plain compared to ours. Not even to mention other planets and the universe as we understand it. So the difference in size and complexity from his second frequency life to our third frequency life and understanding is almost immeasurable and totally incomprehensible from his perspective. Now, as you see the difference in complexity from the second to third frequency, you can see the parallel I am drawing for us, excuse the pun with a pencil, drawing, in the third frequency in comparison to the fourth, fifth, up to 12th frequency levels. Then onto the second dimension and the first frequency level in the first subcomponent of the second dimension, where that is a whole new universe, and the size and complexity is 12 times from his first dimension. And there are hundreds more universes above that. I think you can start to see the enormity and complexity of it all. I might put some images up to give you something to grab hold of regarding the levels of frequencies and dimensions. Now just think of the physics which these first frequency beings use as tools in their environment. For them, these are useful tools and help them to live and prosper in their own plane of existence. But from our perspective, these tools are like child's toys. They are useful for them, but not at all useful for us. We have a much more complex understanding of reality and have the tools which reflect that understanding. So you can imagine that there is a much greater understanding in the higher frequency realms on those planes of existence compared to our own. So it could be that when we look at quantum physics, for example, all known physics and tools we use in our macro environment are no longer valid and break down. Perhaps that is because we are getting a glimpse of a higher frequency plane of existence. Let's take this analogy a bit further. As third frequency beings, perhaps you want to take a look at this first frequency being and his life and environment in the second frequency. So we develop a tool which we can view their lives and how they live in their realm of existence. We can then come in and view them at any point in their lives, and any life in particular, as we see them all as lines on a sheet of paper. We might even want to experience what it is like to be a first frequency being living in a very restricted life, from our perspective, in view and understanding, and see how it feels. What troubles and strife they experience, the joys and happiness. This would be for scientific and perhaps even for our own interest to go through their frustrations and experiences they have in order to add to our own understanding. For evolutionary and spiritual progression, we would develop a way of making a dot on this plane of existence or of using a dot already there and downloading a small part of our consciousness into this dot in order to live there for the extent of the life of that first frequency being. We live outside of that time frame of these first frequency beings, and so when that life is finished, we simply come back to our body in our own plane of existence, and hardly, if any, time has passed for us in our own third frequency existence. I'm sure you can see the parallel I'm making here with my own experience of being a secondary incarnation on this planet, in this plane of existence, and indeed of being an aspect of a TES, which is a true energetic self, which is outside of any time frame that we can possibly imagine. I just want to add that the consciousness and understanding that we have is always limited by the plane of existence in which we are living. Like an internet speed, the lower the frequency plane we live on, lowers the bandwidth of our consciousness and understanding. So as a third frequency being, we are running on a 512 megabit per second or lower bandwidth, as opposed to the 12 millibyte per second on a fourth frequency perhaps. But I think the difference is probably much greater than we can imagine. So we cannot grasp fully our place here in the hierarchy of sentient conscious beings throughout the universe. We can only see things from our own perspective, from our level of plane of existence. But we are all much higher sentient beings, living in all the levels of the multiverse, right back to the source and the origin. It is possible to connect with our higher selves and raise our frequency through spiritual practices like meditation, to move forwards in our spiritual evolution and understanding. And that is the purpose of our lives here, in this, the lowest dimension of the universe, the multiverse, to learn and evolve, and to eventually become sources ourselves. You are multiversal. So there we have it. That was my perspective and how I attempt to explain. So when you see UFOs popping in and out of existence, they're likely to be beings, not always possibly, but likely to be beings that live in a higher frequency and are just coming down into our frequency in order to visit and see us here and then go back. And I think that's how some higher frequency beings that are still physical and live, and we can see, if they want us to, in our physical realm of existence, they have a mode of transport. And I think when they blink out and blink back in and disappear, I think they can move from one place to another. It's like coming off that bit of paper out into here and then just going back into the piece of paper somewhere else. They can just travel distance and time in an instant because they pop out and pop back in, because their technology is such that they can do that. So there can be beings that live in our plane of existence, but of a much higher technology and possibly even a higher frequency level. And the higher you go in the frequency levels, the less physical beings become. And so they don't need bodies, they don't need craft, they just exist as energy. So that's like my primary incarnation. So I'm a secondary incarnation, and my primary lives in a much higher frequency plane of existence. And in order to come here and experience what it's like to be human, and to have this evolutionary experience, but progression of having lived here in this, to have this feeling of not being connected. I think that the higher you go up, the higher frequency you are, the more connection you have with everything, the more understanding you have. And the lower you go, the more you're cut off from that. And in my experience of meeting family, friends, colleagues from higher frequency, who live in the higher frequencies whilst I've been here, when I've been in contact with them, and other people will have the similar experience, spiritual experiences of meeting higher frequency beings. They might call them angels or other things maybe, when they're in their vicinity, these higher frequency beings, although they're lowering their frequency in order to be visible in this low frequency level, they're still emitting a higher frequency, and you can feel that. And so you might feel a lot of love and compassion and all sorts of wonderful things, because that's more of what it's like in their frequency level of existence. And when we get close to that, we can feel some of that. And that is borne out by a lot of people's experiences with ETs, or even religious people who don't believe in ETs but have religious experiences with beings that appear. And they may come in a form of, controversially, I'm not here to upset anyone, but, if religious people see what they might call angels or Jesus or Mary Magdalene or whatever, and they have this, experience, with a euphoric experience, they might have explained it in hundreds of years gone by, it's because they're getting close to a higher frequency being existence, and they're feeling a bit of that, and that's what's giving them that feeling. So that's it. I think I'll stop there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you got something out of that, and I hope that perspective helps you to think about many things, that you may be able to use that as a tool for. See you again when I make another video. Thank you.